Chapter 257, Powerful Summoner Shy Husband. After watching the video, Godfrey dropped the tablet on the sofa and leaned his head back, exhaling softly. Isolde tilted her head when the silence lingered too long. My father died defending me and my mother. I don't know who this is, but it's not him. Isolde's eyes narrowed, then she closed them with a pained expression. It's him, Godfrey, not some plot by Cain. I saw him in a vision. What exactly did you see, Isolde? Godfrey glanced at her from the corner of his left eye. His golden irises were like the sharp, gleaming edge of a knife. Isolde's eyes widened. She understood what Godfrey meant by that question. Glimpses of the future didn't mean the full picture, the same way she didn't know the Black Knight was her, or that her inference didn't cause a change, but instead she became a different catalyst for the same end. I only saw his face. She closed her eyes regretfully. Then it could also mean anything. Just because it bears my father's face doesn't mean it's my father, if that thing is after my mother. Godfrey couldn't finish when Isolde interjected with a firm tone. What if this man happens to be your father? She stared intently at him. A different, softer expression flashed through Godfrey's face before it vanished beneath a placid one. He's not. He got to his feet and left the sitting room. In the bathroom, Godfrey stood under the shower with his eyes closed. The water splattered against muscles sculpted beyond human limits, a side effect of mastery. The man Isolde showed him kept flashing through his mind. It got too infuriating that he found himself opening and closing his eyes to push it away. I need to focus on my priorities, and that is seeking means to grow, which is finding more paragons, or if it comes to it, I'll have to find a way to breach worlds. He spoke aloud, then tilted his head upward to face the shower squarely. As the water droplets bounced off his skin and steam rose, there was a sudden knock on the door. Godfrey snapped his head in that direction. He switched off the shower, picked up a towel which was wrapped around his waist before the door was opened, albeit slightly. Isolde. Godfrey tilted his head at the sight of Isolde in a bathrobe. She folded her arms, her hair tied in a messy bun, but Godfrey had to admit, he actually found this hair color more attractive. It was also more luscious than her previous one. But to see Isolde in a bathrobe, all his priorities went out the window. What are you doing here? He asked. Her room has its own bathroom. It's even better than mine. Let's set our differences aside. Her eyes locked on his nether region protected by his towel. Don't make me regret choosing you as my partner. You don't act like a husband who knows how to fulfill his needful duties. I brought you back to life, Godfrey argued internally. He cleared his throat, pulled her towards him with telekinesis, wrapped his arms around her slender waist and shut the bathroom door. Why is it dark in here? Isolde's eyes widened in alarm. It's better this way, Godfrey's eyes gleamed. A good while later, Godfrey came to the sitting room with a glass of water. He found Isolde sitting on the sofa reading a book. When she saw him sit beside her, she patted her thighs softly. Godfrey smiled softly and lay on them. Of course it was soft, not unreasonably like a pillow, but it made his heart too happy for him to feel comfortable. They were already a couple, but acted like a boyfriend and a girlfriend. Both of them slowly explored their characters, something they would have learned in the elf dungeon had he not closed it down in 7 days. Isolde caressed his hair with one hand while holding the book with the other. A pretty smile appeared on her face when she tilted her eyes downward and saw his bright blue eyes. About what we discussed earlier, Godfrey began. He might not be your father. There's no need for us to argue, Isolde replied. There's a chance he might be, Godfrey muttered softly. Isolde giggled inwardly. They had suddenly switched sides, Godfrey taking her previous stance and she taking his previous one. We'll figure that out when it comes to it. Right now, there's something we need to figure out. Although we've not fulfilled some marriage requirements and hosted a wedding, Taking you to the elf dungeon was no different from us taking marriage vows with the agreement of our parents. So, should I call you babe? Godfrey looked away. Frey won't cut it. It's not sweet enough. Other girls might call you Frey. Other girls? Godfrey raised an eyebrow. I saw how the girl from Gate Defenders Guild defended you publicly. That could damage her reputation, but she stood up for you. I know it's just. She's jealous. Wow, I didn't think Isolde had this side to her. What about darling, sweetheart? Godfrey felt as if arrows were shot into his heart each time Isolde mentioned those endearing words. You're killing the young man. A mature female voice rang in Isolde's head. It came from one of her two most powerful dragons. Isolde looked and saw Godfrey's flushed cheeks and ears. She blinked several times, then burst into a pearl peal of laughter while trying to cover her mouth. Unfortunately, she failed miserably. Godfrey got up. I'm going to bed. He stormed out of this room. Darling, don't be offended. I didn't mean to make you uncomfortable, my sweet hubby. Godfrey was tormented by the rush of emotions from his heart, while Isolde enjoyed his flushed face. To her, he looked even more attractive this way. Two paragon dragons within her pitied the young man, but both of them were dreadful beings. Sylphiet the Freezing Omen, a 500-foot-long dragon that froze an entire continent. The other was Luther the Black Death, whose flames never quenched. Once he unleashes it, the flames would never stop burning unless it was swallowed back in. It had killed the dark elf progenitor and burned the undying troll king until the progenitor died. Until date, the world of trolls was still burning after being visited by Luther. And now, these apex creatures of their species watched their new mother flirt with her husband in an apartment too small to fit their heads. Knock, knock. With a soft click, a door opened, revealing Isaac to Victoria, who quickly came out and looked around but couldn't find Godfrey anywhere. Where's he? She turned to Isaac. Isaac shook his head and turned to Valentina, who currently stood at the door. Both of them were expecting news about Godfrey. Isaac could see that from the look they gave him after scanning his surroundings. I'm here for a different reason, Mrs. Valentina. Valentina's eyes widened slowly as she noticed how Isaac addressed her. What other reason could there be? Victoria responded harshly. She paused, took a deep breath, opened her eyes, and asked calmly, Did you hear from him? We didn't, Isaac said heavily. Godfrey had gone rogue after Isolde's death. For now, they knew he had to be at Pendragon Island, but that was all. We found someone. To be more specific, someone found us, and he introduced himself as Ronald Daniels. Isaac's words made Valentina's fingers tremble before she stilled them. My husband, she gasped in disbelief. It couldn't be. He had been dead for 18, almost 19 years now. Would you like to come with us to confirm his identity? Isaac was stunned to see Valentina rush in to pick up her bag. Let's go, Victoria, come with me. All of them entered the truck Isaac came in and were driven to the vagabond camp. More elite class gathered as Valentina drew closer to the meeting hall for elite class vagabonds. Eventually, she stood outside the door. He's inside, Arden told her. Thalia stood behind with her arms crossed. Lucy and Isaac also stood at the sidelines. Oliver is in there with him. We left him there to keep an eye on you-know-who. You're worth a huge bounty, so you have to be careful, even though we've already put a suppressor on him. After listening to all Arden had to say, Valentina steeled her heart. There was no way her husband would suddenly come back to life after 18 long years. It had to be because of the bounty. Yet, knowing this, why did she want to open the door? With a soft push, the door swung inward, revealing a large rectangular hall with gray walls. Two men sat on a long table. Oliver sat on the left, sipping a drink, while the man opposite him just looked around. He had long, slightly curly golden hair that fell almost to his waist. It was thick and bushy. His beard was shaved but was growing out once more. He had a broad back and prominent muscles on both arms. There was this wild air around him, but everything changed when he turned, and their eyes met. Valentina's breath hitched, her heartbeat roared in her ears. Ronald rose to his feet, maintaining eye contact. His ocean blue eyes gazed at her for a while. "I heard it's been 18 years. His voice rang softly. Oliver paused, eyeing the duo with surprise. Could this man be the real deal? When Valentina didn't speak, Ronald continued, "You look good. How's our boy?" Valentina raced down the staircase and into Ronald's arms. Oliver swiftly left as he could hear her sobbing. The door was quickly shut. Meanwhile, Valentina touched Ronald's golden arm with teary eyes. A few minutes later, Ronald sat on the table, opening and closing the fingers of his restored arm. It felt really foreign, trying to get used to it. "White is phenomenal. I better not try to block a blow with this arm." He chuckled while Valentina watched him, a beautiful smile on her face. "How have you been?" she asked gently. Ronald looked at her. "Trust me, living with dwarves isn't easy. You get to do a whole lot of heavy lifting." Valentina chuckled. Ronald suddenly cleared his throat, glancing at her. "Who are you with now? Those people were quite secretive. Was there any lucky man to take my place?" Valentina's face lit up with amusement. "Godfrey would bash their heads in. I think he scared a good lot of them away." She tilted her head with a charming gleam of love in her eyes. "He's been my little husband. Somehow he loves his father even when he hasn't met him in person or received any sort of gift." A warm smile appeared on Ronald's face. "So, still single?" Valentina flashed a ring. "I'm married." It was the same ring he gave her. Realizing this, Ronald held Valentina's waist and lifted her up. Valentina wrapped her arms around his neck, her face brighter than ever. "I've seen the news, but I have to get warm with my family first. That will come second." "You need a haircut, a proper one," Valentina chided. "I can see where Godfrey got his charming eyes from." Thalia's comment earned her a side glance from Arden. "You saw it too, didn't you? You think I didn't see how you were infatuated with Godfrey?" Thalia sneered. Arden scoffed, while Lucy's cheeks gained a faint pink hue. "Don't torment the innocent girl," Oliver said while looking at Lucy. Her eyes widened when everyone turned to her, including Isaac. What?" Lucy's face reddened. Did any of them know how she felt when the cold grip of death went round her neck under that pool as her peers laughed? She could still hear the ice cracking as Godfrey shattered it and brought her out. He ended up bloodied after fighting the Polaris King bodyguards. That picture had not left her head, and that wasn't the only time Godfrey had intervened to help her. She held her head high and looked away with a scowl. "What's going on here?" Dax looked at them. "He's a widower and still mourning." "The man became a widower, and his father got to reunite with his wife. Talk about being unlucky," Oliver muttered. "He won't be the same," Arden sighed. Just then, Elder Orion and John appeared in the corridor and approached them. When they got to the door, John's face paled. So did Orion's. "You said whoever is in there is wearing a suppressor?" John asked Arden. "He is," she replied. "Then why?" John almost stuttered as he felt an overwhelming pressure. Like a ferocious bear loomed over them. It was suffocating. Fortunately, it all cleared when Gabriel stepped out of a spatial tier and knocked. After knocking, he opened the door and saw Ronald sitting on a chair with Valentina beside him. Valentina stood up, and Ronald copied her move. "That's Gabriel. He watches over Paradise. He's also one of the main reasons me and Godfrey have been safe. Godfrey is quite fond of him too." "Oh," Ronald's face brightened. Gabriel smiled warmly. "No need to be so formal. He's like a son to me, and I'm glad his father is back." One man stood before a petrified door in a huge hall with golden walls. On the door were the carved images of 10 alchemists in their robes that covered their faces, and behind each of them were the royal apostles and a bright sun with carved rays above it all. Behind that door are the alchemists, the backbones of the golden castle and the royal apostles. But it doesn't feel like my throne is there, he muttered to himself. A king without a throne, odd but has a nice ring to it. Isolde's sharp yet sweet voice rang from behind. Godfrey turned and raised an eyebrow at the young lady sitting with one leg crossed over another on her throne. She leaned on one hand. That same nonchalant pose with those intimidating draconic eyes that seemed to burn with golden flames right from a thin, dark source which was the pupils. If I get all this right, all your knights are lords of their own right. That's why we get our throne chambers, she muttered. You know, my knights usually stand when I'm in their quarters. Godfrey folded his arms as he fully turned to face her. Isolde tapped the armrest with her other hand. Come sit here, darling. Isolde, Godfrey clenched his teeth. Was she doing this on purpose? Well, he knew Isolde had always been bold and daring, which painted quite a huge contrast when she wept in his arms. Won't you sit beside your queen? She teased with a smirk. On an armrest. Frey Tilda, haven't we always heard those who get married become one? You and I share the same soul space, in a sense we're one, Isolde said sweetly. Godfrey chuckled. He walked up the dais, picked Isolde up, shocking her greatly. He sat down and kept her on his lap. Her legs were on the armrest and her arms were around his neck. Isolde smiled, lay her head on his chest and closed her eyes. It's only us here, our own castle. Her soft breath came with a whisper. I wish I could meet your mom. I don't know if she likes me. Godfrey held her waist and gently caressed her back. Cain can't find out you're alive. If he does, he'll know that his secret has been exposed. I also doubt I'll be able to hold it in if I meet Gabriel. For someone as perceptive as him, he'll figure out that I'm pretending and he'll become suspicious. Isolde slowly opened her eyes, and it gleamed softly. Once you gain the throne to this castle, he'll come for you. Cain should at least be a progenitor. Luther and Sylphiette can kill progenitors, but I'm not sure they can bring Cain down, not when he can reset the day over and over again. We know he has 3 bodies and a little about these 3 bodies. Knowledge or not, strength will prevail, Godfrey responded. Isolde looked up, barely 2 inches separating their faces. Should I open a breach to another world? I'm a paragon, it shouldn't be too hard. Godfrey blinked. You know how to do that. Isolde nodded. Dragons can speak to me and 2 of them have done it. I just have to connect to my core and search for a world. I've tried it. Connect to my paragon core. Godfrey closed his eyes. Follow my finger. Isolde whispered as she pressed her finger against his neck and trailed down to where his chest met his abdomen. Here, she added a little pressure. Inwardly, Godfrey suddenly found himself in a multicolored space. It was like he was moving through the universe at an unmatched speed, but in the next moment, all that momentum ceased. It seemed as if different worlds rotated around him. He returned to the castle as his eyes snapped open. That was impressive, Godfrey said. Isolde smiled softly. You can make a core for your chief knights and send them to different worlds. And they'll be doing the same thing other races did to us, Godfrey frowned. That's how the universe works. Isolde lowered her head and said. Godfrey held his chin and lifted her head. Their eyes met, his was quite sharp. That isn't you, Isolde. You're a Pendragon and your duty is to protect Earth from whatever wants to destroy it, not invade and ruin other worlds. Those dragons are speaking a little too much into your ears. He leaned closer, staring straight into her eyes. If you coerce her against her husband, I'll wipe the last of you and make a unit of dragon knights. Then he smiled. I hope we're clear. Isolde batted her eyelashes. He's fierce. I don't expect any less from a Patan prince. Sylphiette's voice rang while Luther growled. He grew angry at the roars of other dragons. and unleashed a terrifying roar that made them silent. Grace watched the display with cold eyes while nestling on a hilltop. Isolde pecked Godfrey's cheeks. He lifted her up and strolled to the exit. He didn't need to, but just felt like it. Honestly, I also thought of invading other worlds, but there are enough invaders on Earth to give me what I want. But this makes me wonder, has Adam been barging into different worlds and destroying them, or is there another way other than invasion? Isolde squinted while still in her husband's arms. She had a thoughtful expression. Adam might actually be out there leaving piles and piles of bodies for what had happened on Earth a century ago. Achoo! A gigantic monkey king sneezed, unleashing a wave that crumbled a mountain. He exhaled, dragging his staff as he faced off against other beast gods. You've killed, and now you're killing gods. What sort of vile race did you stem from? The sun elf god who appeared above the devastated battlefield bellowed as he saw the stone gorilla god had fallen. I will kill everything that isn't human until not one exists, and then I'll find out if the mana tree burns. Monkey King declared with a laugh that made the sun elf god's blood grow cold. With a sweep of his staff, he tore the continent into two, all while glaring intently at those fleeing. I was on my own, wasn't I? You had to take my child and my wife. I'm simply repaying the favor. By wiping out all existences, the sun elf glared at this madman. It will be my pleasure. The Monkey King swung the staff on his shoulder after decimating an alliance of beast gods. I'm sorry I'm late. A man with shoulder-length white hair, black spectacles, and a fanged necklace over his casual white top and blue jeans entered the office of Pagoda's guild master. Serious as ever, huh? Tamaz chuckled, eyeing the men seated in the large office. One of them was Alex Wang, the renowned guild master of Pagoda Guild, while the other was Raphael, another Paragon-tier summoner who had the six-eyed shadow wolf, a creature that was once the shadow demon god's pet. It stood at a terrifying height of 400 feet, taller than some skyscrapers. Raphael wore a black executive suit, while Alex wore a white one. The look they gave Tamaz showed they more or less expected him to come looking like he already did. Tamaz himself was also a Paragon tier, whose summon was a terrifying gigantic boar able to control air. These men were individuals that could wipe out cities on a whim. The authorities made sure they kept close tabs on figures like these, as even the public didn't know much about them. They were at the apex of Earth's summoners' hierarchy, existences that could devastate a continent. Nukes were meaningless. No sorts of technology had any power on these few. Tamaz sat down and crossed one leg over the other. You know, the authorities will be very curious as to why 3 of Earth's 5 paragons are gathering. Well, they have their ace to keep us in check, Raphael replied softly, speaking about the most powerful paragon amongst the 5 of them. It's been decades since I saw him, Tamaz shrugged. It's good that you came, Alex spoke up. Tamaz blinked. Where's Miquela? She might also be an agent of the authorities, but isn't your message to all of us who have returned? She was sent on a mission, Alex responded. You haven't heard that a paragon was born in the United States, have you? Raphael lifted an eyebrow. What? Apparently, he's a vagabond and is currently staying at Pendragon Island after the death of his partner. He's not hiding his presence, and even after putting in some words for him, I don't think it worked. Miquela is currently on her way to the island as we speak. Alex sighed. Tamaz tilted his head with a shocked expression. They sent the judge against a fresh paragon. She might also be a young paragon, but her ability allows her to place judgment on those even 1.5 tiers above her. If they send her, all escape routes have been sealed for this paragon. It's unfortunate, but there are more concerning matters at hand. You know about the Forbidden City in Beijing? Alex looked at both men whose expressions changed. Of course they knew about the most dangerous Blue Gate dungeon on Earth. It has existed for over 70 years, and was the only dungeon known to grow with time. It might have been because the boss had never been killed once for the past 70 years. The number of dungeon beasts had just been maintained at a certain number to ensure there was no dungeon break. There's been some changes. I'm afraid the blue gate is slowly turning red, which means the boss is definitely a Paragon tier. If it emerges with the Crimson Touty army, China won't be safe, and I'm being cautious with my words. Alex told them with a solemn face. You lost your wife in that dungeon, yet you're still burdened by it, Raphael sighed. Tamaz widened his legs and entwined his fingers while his elbows rested on his thighs. We've united to fight this thing twice, never reached the palace and lost a lot. Alex, you lost your wife, Raphael, you lost your twin brother. The second time we faced it as Origins and still couldn't get past that Crimson Touty army. What are the odds that we can win this time? Tamaz questioned. I recently got an ability that will work against that army, Alex replied. Ability or not, if that gate turns red, we lose for real. Maybe the whole of Asia might crumble, Raphael retorted. Once Miquella is back, we shall continue. The seven heads are willing to aid us with the full might of the military should we fail and the gate turn red, Alex said. If he was here, our chances would have been higher. Even Godfrey could be of help if it weren't for the circumstances. It was late. The sound of rustling leaves fell into Godfrey's ears as he strolled down a path with a hoodie on. He just wanted to stroll around a bit but did not expect the woman before him. I wondered why the dragons are strangely quiet. So you're the reason, he thought inwardly while staring at the woman with a long blonde bob cut. She wore the usual coat agents wore, but a white one with 3 rows of golden buttons. Miquella looked to be between her mid to late 30s, but was actually in her early 50s. Standing beside her was an 11 feet 11 foot tall judge cloaked in a white robe. A humanoid summoner. I see you're one of the authorities hunting hounds. Godfrey looked at her, his eyes, which had reverted back to the blackout state, intently locked on Miquella. She scoffed with an unchanging expression. I have been taught restraint, something I doubt you have. I have seen your record. Do you know that you can wipe out the entirety of Manhattan with that skill you used at Brooklyn on a whim? Isn't that depriving the citizens of their right to safety by letting you walk free? What about my rights? Am I not a citizen? Godfrey asked slowly. You are a rebel to society. The families of those you've slain have made countless petitions against you. You have also been recorded of killing your very own classmates. Don't you think their parents or siblings want justice? Miquella stated with a collected tone, showing absolutely no change in her expression. She was the judge. She handled the guilty once facts proved they were one. Everyone is a villain. To the family of as many that tried to get my mother killed or wanted my own head, I'm a villain. They loathe me, but that's their perspective. I only did what I had to protect myself, to protect my family. There are also people who see a different side of me, people who I've saved from death. I'm a hero to some, a villain to some. That's the uncanny truth. Is that what you want me to say? Miquella's eyes gleamed, and both of them appeared in a hall. Miquella sat on a throne with the judge beside her. 7 ivory statues with greatswords stood on both sides of the hall. You don't even stand with your philosophical stance. You've become a monster, Godfrey Daniels. I find you guilty, and your punishment will be memory alteration. Law of restriction of movement and binding of summon fell on Godfrey as she spoke them inwardly. You are the one who is guilty. How so? Miquella raised an eyebrow. She was a 25.8 Paragon tier summoner, and she could subdue a 27.3 Paragon tier, but the punishment she just gave did not take effect. Who brings the next in line to the throne forcefully to a court? Who gave you such authority? Miquella's eyes narrowed. Silence. She gave another law that would render Godfrey unable to speak. You met the wrong man. A voice whispered into her ears. For the first time ever, Miquella shivered. Her left eye went to the corner and found Godfrey holding the backrest of her throne, leaning towards her. His black sclera and golden pupils pierced her soul. "You met the wrong man," a voice whispered into her ears. For the first time ever, Miquella shivered. Her left eye went to the corner and found Godfrey holding the backrest of her throne, leaning towards her. His black sclera and golden pupils pierced her soul. Miquella left her throne, somersaulting twice through the air and landing with one knee on the ground. Her eyes followed Godfrey, who sat on her throne and entwined his fingers. "Why isn't my judgment working on him? Could it be? No, it can't be. He's a newborn paragon." Her self-control was slowly slipping, and it was evident from the doubtful expression on her face. "You would have been dead if I wished to take your life, but I really do not want to eliminate Earth's powerhouses, or that would make this world more vulnerable." "So you care about the world now?" Miquella scoffed while rising to her feet, her back straight. Godfrey looked at her. Silence settled between them, and the air felt so tense it was hot. There was no response for her. This world was a cage, but also his safest ground. Cain would rather allow anyone to die than him. That manipulation naturally made Godfrey colder, but he still appreciated Earth. After all, it existed even before Cain was born. It existed before the apocalypse, and besides, what would he gain from the death of millions, a good number of which might be real people? Yes, he didn't want anyone close to him. He could barely bring himself to trust that this woman before him wasn't a clone. "Go back, tell the 7 to keep their eyes off me. You are guilty of threatening the judge, and the punishment of that is death." Miquella's eyes gleamed defiantly. At her judgment, the 7 statues lifted their swords, making their way toward Godfrey. "No, you're guilty for threatening a crown prince of an entire race with death. The punishment of that." As he spoke, Miquella's eyes trembled. What in the world was this feeling? Goosebumps flared up all over her body as her heartbeat roared in her ears. The reason. Her statues, executors of her judgment, all turned to her while Godfrey spoke. This had never happened before. At least someone stronger could just break away from her law, but no one could usurp her authority in a court where she was the judge. She held the final say. That was how it was supposed to be. "You'd lose your limbs." Miquella's eyes widened to the limit, fear visible within them as the statues loomed over her. One of them swung its greatsword, slicing off one of her arms. A piercing scream filled with agony bounced against the walls of the hall as she collapsed on her knees, sweat pooling on her forehead. Her eyes reddened, heart pounding like it wanted to escape. The shadows of her statues that once gave her power now terrified her to the depths of her soul. Wait," Miquella pleaded as the statues lifted their weapons. She had seen what they had done to others after judgment was passed. "Please." Her scream pierced the air as she shut her eyes. The moment her eyes opened again, Miquella found herself in the forest path facing Godfrey. Blood leaked down her mouth, and though both arms were still intact, she couldn't control the one that was sliced off in the judgment hall. Her ability stood on the foundation of authority and law. That naturally gave her the advantage even to judge people stronger than her. Defeat had only been the end of whoever she faced due to how special her ability was. Miquella didn't know defeat. Her pride could be found in the way she carried herself and her unshakable expression. But for the first time ever, for a reason she couldn't comprehend, someone bested her in authority. The unknown king's heir couldn't be judged. According to Patan law, that meant death. He wasn't a president who could be bound. All authority resided within his words. He owned the final say. As Miquella swayed, her vision blurred occasionally. Godfrey drew close, forcing her to take shaky steps backwards, her pride in shatters, her confidence gone with the wind. "Don't fret, I'm just going for a walk," Godfrey whispered as he walked past her like nothing happened between them. Miquella collapsed to her knees and fell on her side, eyes wide open, but all that could be seen was confusion and fear. At a left turn, Godfrey saw Arthur standing there in a long, comfy coat and pajamas beneath. He leaned against a tree, eyeing him. "I thought you would kill her," he said. Godfrey's blackout eyes shone as he raised an eyebrow. "You know your visage hasn't changed. Your aura is still unchanged, but something in your heart has softened. I'm not saying that's the reason you spared Miquella." "It's not," Godfrey interrupted. His eyes flashed to the path he came from. "There's quite the delicate balance at the Paragon tier. We don't just die, we become a resource for the growth of the killer. I don't just think I'll come back if I kill and absorb her core." Godfrey replied calmly, his hands tucked into the pockets of his hoodie. "The top has proven to be even worse than the bottom. Somehow it gets more cruel up here." Arthur chuckled bitterly. Godfrey nodded softly. "When I first saw what the guild master of Pagoda Guild did to that demon, I didn't understand. But now it's all clear. We can breach worlds. We have immense power but are also great resources. We can't die normal deaths as our cores will be ravaged for." "And," Arthur lifted an eyebrow, "I'll be different." "No, I am already different." Godfrey's reply made Arthur smile. "You're growing quite well in this unpleasant world. That's good." Arthur turned and was about to walk away when Godfrey asked a question. "How did you sense a paragon that hid her aura? That shouldn't be possible for the best origin tier summoner in the world." Arthur tilted his head, revealing the left side of his face. "All summons are unique, Godfrey. I'm sure you must have heard that before. Each of my dragon heads has the power of a peak-level origin tier, and I have 14 of them. Do I seem like an origin tier summoner to you now?" Arthur's words made Godfrey's eyes narrow. "I'm home," a middle-aged man announced with a bright smile as he came in through the door, squatting and spreading his arms wide for his 6-year-old daughter who jumped into his embrace. Bam spat fire. She beamed brightly, pointing at a lion cub that ran toward them to showcase its skill. Seeing the small beast spit flames made the man gasp in an exaggerated fashion before patting the cub's soft, furry head. The man looked at his wife, who leaned at the kitchen's entrance with a hand towel, and smiled. Both were elite-tier summoners. He had a lion and she had a fox. They were average, maybe even below average with the emerging tiers, but their daughter surprisingly awakened a summon with queen-tier potential on her 6th birthday. The future had never looked brighter. After playing with his daughter, the man went in to change and they had their dinner. As she took the dishes to the kitchen, there was a knock on the door. When the man opened the door, he tilted his head a bit. Is there a problem?" he asked the stranger, who had long black hair tied to a ponytail, a faint outline of beards on his well-sculpted face. His skin was pale and he wore a white shirt, neatly folding the sleeves to the middle of his forearms. His well-defined physique could not be hidden by his formal outfit, which somehow made him look even better. He wore black pants and polished shoes. "There is no problem. I just wanted to check on the family," Kane smiled warmly. "On what?" The man's tone changed, gaining a sharp edge this time. "Who are you?" "Oh, I forgot to introduce myself," Kane chuckled. "I'm your creator," he smiled. "WH." The man stopped halfway as his irises turned crimson. "So," Kane crossed his arms. "What's your name?" "I don't remember what it was," he asked as he took slow, confident steps into the apartment. "Julius," the man replied as he shut the door. His wife came out of the kitchen. She was confused at this stranger that looked around like he owned the place. "Honey, who's this?" "I'm Kane," Kane said to her with a smile. "See, Kane, what is this?" She turned to her husband. "Who is this man?" Kane could already sense the fear in her voice. Then he turned and saw the little girl at the staircase. "Oh, hello." Before he could take 2 steps, the woman blocked him. "He won't hurt her," Julius reassured his wife as he gently held her wrist, but she refused to budge. What was going on here? Her mind screamed. A pained groan left her lips when her husband's grip tightened. "I said, get out of his way," he roared and flung her. The force sent her to the wall with a loud sound. Before she could snap out of the shock, the man picked up the dinning chair and whipped it against her face. "Daddy," his daughter screamed. "Shush!" Kane pressed his index finger against his mouth while facing the little girl. Then, with a mere blink of his eyes, Julius regained control of himself. He discovered the broken, bloodied chair still in his hands. His badly bloodied wife lay on the floor. She was still alive, weeping as she heaved in pain. "Honey," the man screamed, throwing the chair away as he reached out to her, but the woman trembled even more, forcing out a scream to save her life. Don't touch me, please." Julius could see she was horrified by him. Then right before him, his wife's eyes shone with crimson light, and she faced him with a meek expression. "I think I was injured," she said softly. That softness in her voice made Julius, whose eyes had also turned crimson, smile. "I was worried," he replied fondly, and picked her battered body from the ground while she heaved in pain. Kane's eyes went to the little girl, who didn't know what to make out of what was going on before her. Her father took her mother to the sofa, got a first aid kit, and began to attend to her while Kane approached her. Bam growled as Kane got close and squatted. "You won't forget this. This scar will shape your life. Oh, and remember, a humanoid summoner was kindly invited into your home and nearly killed your mother. I can reset you at any time. Promise me that you won't forget." Kane stretched out his pinky. The girl's eyes became red and she bound her pinky with his own. "I promise." Kane smiled. A minute later, he came out of the house with a soft smile that didn't reach his eyes. "I haven't created anything in a long time. Those I've made in advance will soon be depleted. Soon, most of them will be experiencing barrenness. But do I have time to create Bobbies?" He looked at the woman waiting by the roadside. Nerissa stood there. She was one of his greatest creations in the aspect of beauty. None could match her as her summon added a layer of irresistible charm to her already elegant traits. Unfortunately, she thought those traits will help her earn his love. Love wasn't real, control was. Whoever doubted him could take a look at the family he just left. Kane looked through the window, smiling as Julius pecked his wife's forehead while she held his arm. The sight made him chuckle. They left through a portal, and he appeared at the entrance of a grand hall. Over 100 people lined up neatly, and covered in black cloaks stood on the left and right side, facing each other. They were superiors, nobles of the sanctuary, and had the privilege to worship their god in such close proximity. The moment he appeared, they all went on their knees and kowtowed, crying out, "The Lord of Recreation bless us." Kane walked past them and stood on the dais. "The world hasn't deviated, good. The time for our kind to step out of the darkness is close." Nerissa smiled as she bowed. She was one of the few that wasn't supposed to kowtow, her eyes tilted to the side. Right there, a young man also bowed. What was his name? Wasn't it John? 3 days later. Night time. "We're here, guys. Who tilda I'm nervous," Nathan whispered while adjusting his head camera. He also held a selfie stick that showed his face. His team worked outside the dungeon, making sure those watching the stream would have access to the split on their screens. Above, they would see the terrain of the place through the head camera, and below was Nathan's face. His expressions and reactions were also huge selling points. He was a big shot now. The Athens crisis and the accidental streaming of Godfrey's battle against the limitless summon shot his popularity through the roof. His subscribers were over 100 million. Although the 2 streams that made him big were both accidental, Nathan with his new team planned to show them the most dangerous Blue Gate dungeon in the world. "All right, I'm ready." Nathan rubbed his hands together. 6 other individuals were with him, Saint-tier summoners that made up one of the best freelancing teams in China. At least they could guarantee his safety. "Can we go now?" The leader beckoned for him to follow them. "So guys, we're in Beijing, the capital of China." He followed them with a moderate pace. They walked on pavement blocks made centuries ago with buildings featuring red walls, yellow glazed tile roofs, and intricate bracket sets on the left and right sides. This path was quite wide, as the main gate was just behind him. "We're in the famous Forbidden City, right in the heart of Beijing. This place has existed for nearly 600 years, is as big as 100 football fields, and has once housed 24 emperors, their concubines, and thousands of eunuchs. But now—" Nathan looked around. "Not so much. I'm joking. Anyone who goes through the main gate will surely arrive here, in this twisted version of the Forbidden City. It's almost the same as the actual Forbidden City, but this one is a graveyard, and the Crimson Taudi army patrols often, guarding their non-existent citizens." He was quite focused on his screen when he suddenly bumped into one of the freelancers. The man glared at him. "I'm sorry, I didn't." The remaining words fell off his wide mouth as he gawked at a crimson-armored footman on a rooftop. The footman was clad in crimson metal plates, like a medieval Chinese soldier, only much more menacing. His helmet was also a deep, metallic red color, a textured, almost segmented surface with no eye slit for vision. A spiral horn-like plume holder was visible at the top rear of the helmet, and a small crimson plume fluttered softly. The footman held a great axe almost grazing the rooftop. Nathan could almost feel the soft clinks of the chainmail connecting the helmet to the chest plate and double-layered pauldrons. Although Nathan couldn't see it, the symbol of a Taudi, the beast of gluttony, was etched onto the helmet's face. He gulped hard. It stood motionless with a big, bright moon, over 10 times the size of Earth's moon, loomed behind this intimidating footman. Millions of people all over the globe watched Nathan breathe in and out several times before he regained his bearing. He gulped once more. "That was creepy. But the good news is these Taudi soldiers do not move at night, unless you touch them, of course. And this footman's base tier is throne tier, and with each kill, they devour their foes and grow stronger. It's said their only limit is that they can't surpass the emperor." Nathan sucked in a huge amount of air. "Do you know what this means? This casual soldier might actually be a saint or a divine or maybe even an origin tier dungeon monster." He shuddered. Tusk, one of the saint-tier summoners, brought out a gauge. It read 15.5, meaning this soldier was at the peak of throne tier, which also meant it had been killed before. And what else would a dungeon soldier kill, aside from humans? "We should keep moving," their leader said. "Will you visit the 6 eastern palaces or the 6 western palaces first?" "You mean the place where the concubines and consorts stayed?" Nathan responded with a whisper. "You don't have to whisper. Yes, but don't expect any concubines here. It's either the Taudi soldiers or the emperor's ghosts," the leader explained. "Okay, I think I prefer looking for the Taudi cavalrymen and the emperor's ghosts. Let's go wherever you think they'll be," Nathan responded with bright eyes. His viewers had risen to 12 million. God, he was a star, if only it didn't have to be because he was thrusting himself into the jaws of death. "Let's go." As they continued moving, Nathan began to speak to add more spookiness to his viewers, who were already commenting on how eerie the place looked. "This is the only dungeon in the world that has not been cleared. Not once, and it has existed for nearly 70 years. I once heard there have been expeditions to clear it, and all of them have failed but were never revealed to the public. I'm telling you, this place could be even more dangerous than the 2 red gates that opened up in Athens." Nathan kept speaking until they arrived at a place where they could see a bridge, the broken Rainbow Bridge. On it were 4 imposing Taudi cavalrymen rendered immobile in their journey back to the inner court. Their armor was similar to the Taudi footmen, but they had black cloaks and held long spears with black tattered flags. The water below the bridge stirred, ripples after ripples as the wind blew. Seeing that his viewers wanted a closer look, Nathan steeled his heart and went closer. Not even the saint dared get too close as Nathan went on the bridge. "I won't die, I won't die. I'm the cameraman, for God's sake," he chanted in his heart. His heart almost exploded when he was standing beside one of the touty cavalrymen. Both Nathan and his viewers had a good view of the robust armored horse and the terrifying soldier atop. One of the summoners checked the gauge, and his eyes widened to the limit. "All those things are divine tears. Get out of there," he bellowed. That made Nathan shudder, and he almost touched the cavalryman. Millions globally flew away from the screen. Some covered the screen, some even threw their phones away. Nathan froze, 1,000 ways he would have died flashing in his eyes. He carefully retracted his steps and collapsed on the ground, panting heavily. He turned and saw the Saint Tier summoners had already distanced themselves greatly, after using echo to transform their body parts to ensure speed. Nathan blinked. He was still on the ground, trying to regain his composure, but it wasn't possible. "I hope you guys have had enough, because I almost died because of you. By the way, there are thousands of these touty soldiers. We'll find their camp another day, yeah." He spoke softly. James Pendragon grabbed the smooth edges of his bathroom's wash basin, staring at the mirror. He had just finished training and taken his bath. A white bathrobe matching the color of his short white hair covered his fit body. Why keep holding onto what's not meant to be yours? Even after losing your last child, you still won't step down. James clenched his teeth, almost pounding the wash basin. He took a deep breath. Now that Isolde was dead, Arthur had no next in line for the position of family head. His wife had not given birth in ages, so he doubted she would be able to now. After all, he had heard Christine talk about how she would love to give Isolde a younger brother, but had not been able to become pregnant. It was obvious Arthur's line had come to an end. The entire family wasn't even in a great state, since the authorities had been giving them the cold treatment. Arthur, his wife, and that dead daughter of his had dragged the Pendragon family into the mud by meddling with that golden-haired freak. The Ouroboros family and the Bain family, the second and third most powerful family in the western region, loathed Godfrey. Bain was after Isaac and Lucy, but it was obvious Godfrey would protect them. Ouroboros was after Percival, and obviously, they had to contend with Godfrey once more. It was more difficult now that he was said to be a paragon. James splashed water against his face, exhaled slowly as his eyes gleamed with frustration. "I'll continue the meetings with the leaders of the Ouroboros and Bain family. Both of them have the power to crush our family if they unite, but I can't lose my family all because of my elder brother. I'll just have to take out both of them. I don't know how yet, not with that freak on their side." James released the wash basin and stood upright. "I don't know how the family will see a marriage between me and Ouroboros' head. She's been a widow for quite a while. I might gain more favor. After all, with Isolde dead, everyone will be looking forward to who would be next, and who offers a greater future than one who has the second most powerful family's head as his wife. It offers greater opportunities, even a chance to make the authorities extremely cautious." He walked into his room and laid on his bed. The moment James closed his eyes, sunlight fell on his face, and his skin experienced the caress of the refreshing breeze. "What?" James's eyes snapped open, and he found himself lying on the ground facing a tree taller than the skis and a trunk so vast he couldn't see its end. The trunk was so large it was like a never-ending wall. He was like an ant before its roots. James sat upright, his arms trembling as a fruit fell from above. For something coming from such height, it was quite gentle. He didn't know how it evaded all those massive branches, but the fruit eventually landed in his hand. He had heard so much of it. No man at the apex of Earth got there without the mana tree's involvement. It was the source of mana itself, the giver of power. Even you think I'm supposed to rule? Glee shone in James's eyes as the fruit reflected in them. He unleashed a diagram and his summon, a white dragon, came out of the portal. It lowered its head and ate the fruit James stretched over. James stared at his beast. He could already feel the surge of mana. Never in his life had he ever experienced something like this. Wasn't it the same mana? Why was this one so different? His eyes widened in the next second as his dragon roared too loud for comfort. Evolution was never painful, but why was his dragon reacting like this? It had already reached the heights of origin tier. Was this a side effect? He had never heard of a side effect before. James got the answer when his dragon split into two. Both sides regrew, forming two dragons. The pure white one was over 200 feet long from head to tail. The other had red stripes and red bone spikes from its head to its tail. It was almost 300 feet long and growled at him like an actual beast. Both dragons growled at each other. "Eber, calm down," James said, and the pure white dragon calmed a bit, but it cautiously watched as its master approached the other dragon. It was a physical form of Eber. Eber, a blue fire-breathing dragon, was calm and controlled, but this one with stripes was fierce and highly aggressive. It wasn't another summon. James didn't feel any symbiosis with it. His mana signature wasn't on this creature. It was just like an actual dragon. "I'll call you Dread." James' eyes brightened as he approached the beast with caution. He raised one hand up and maintained eye contact with this bad-tempered dragon. Dread lowered his head and suddenly roared at James's face. Its bloodlust shone within its eyes, but that desire wasn't directed towards him. James chuckled, his eyes shining with glee. "Don't worry, you'll have enough to satisfy yourself. You're perfect." James beamed as he finally touched the dragon's nose, caressing it slowly. That fruit had done the unthinkable, and he loved it. In fact, he already knew what he wanted Dread to do. "Dread, the dread of dragons. You must be special and better. You can't be traced back to me." James began to laugh. To think all his frustration would melt away, and his desires would be served on a silver platter. "Guess what, elder brother? You're not the only special one. You were only privileged, and now I'm also privileged." Snow in a hoodie watched the rich brown-skinned girl with purple curly hair packed into two ponytails moving about in an apron serving boba tea and coffee, a soft smile on his face. It was just a few hours before high noon. There were lots of people moving about, but no one noticed. None of them knew the moment they got to the tea shop. They had entered an illusion where Snow didn't exist. Because of that, they couldn't see him even though he stood right outside the glass wall, watching his girlfriend with fondness in his eyes. Who knew he would end up worse than Godfrey? Currently, he was wanted for the death of Superintendent Bram and that of Isolde. Isolde's death alone put him on the top list of most hated fugitives in the globe. People criticized her for her relationship with Godfrey when her feats as an agent were broadcasting, but now that she was dead, a flood of people were pouring hate on him. His eyes widened when Rowana waved at him with a beautiful smile, but she shouldn't be able to see him. His eyes grew cold when he noticed she was waving at a young man who looked to be in his early 20s. He looked well-dressed too, probably high up in the government. Typical, most people just love going after refined gold. Do you know what I went through to give her the confidence to smile without a care in the world? Snow's eyes shimmered and the man's tea became a cup full of worms. The young man screamed and rose to his feet. Suddenly, the hard floor became like mud. The man fell backwards, crashing hard on the ground. The tea, he pointed at the tea with a shocked face. Was this a joke? Was someone playing a prank on him? He just began living next to Rowana and took a liking to her, even became a regular customer that continuously tipped and even encouraged her while making sure he looked his best. But why did it feel like something was wrong? There was this cold feeling that troubled him when Rowana rushed over, offering to help him up. "You'll die." A whisper flew into his ears. The man stiffened, scrambled to his feet and bolted out of the cafe, leaving Rowana feeling embarrassed. Snow bit his lower lip, feeling a bit bad for the awkward place he had put her. "I didn't want to do this," he whispered to himself as he walked right through the window, black glimmer billowing off him. No one noticed a young man in a hoodie, moving straight to where Rowana made the tea and snacks. When Rowana returned, she saw the back view of someone wearing an apron. He wore a baseball cap and was currently busy preparing an order. Rowana's eyes went to her mouth as he tilted his head, revealing the right side of his face. "Can I get this job?" Staring at his unbelievably handsome face that looked cute with the cap and apron, Rowana's shock transformed into amusement. She struggled to hold her laughter. Then she went over and wrapped her arms around his waist from behind. "I knew Godfrey wasn't a bad person." Snow scoffed. "Still all about that freak, huh? Well, you haven't seen him lately." "He's a menace." "At least you're alive. I was afraid he would kill you after what happened to Isolde," Rowana muttered. "You think he can kill me?" "You know it's best to not be on the bad side of a furious Godfrey," Rowana replied. "Tisk, let's handle the orders before the customers complain." "But are you safe here? I heard the—" Rowana couldn't speak anymore as Snow pressed his finger against her lips. "Shush, we have waiting customers and they need to be attended to." It was almost 10 p.m. when Snow and Rowana changed the tag to closed and began to clean up. Snow came out the back to dump the trash. As he dropped it, he paused. 4 individuals laid on the rooftop of 2- and 3-story buildings around the area. They wore black metal vests, black helmets, black boots, gloves, and all other necessities the nation's most elite team needed. They were the Black Ops, normal humans who had been infested with nematode worms, summons of a treasured government summoner. These worms turned normal humans into superhumans, with their powers matching the tier of the worms, which were all divine tier. Although the summoner gained only 20% symbiosis from his 4 nematode worms, the infested soldiers, on the other hand, could perform incredible feats, harnessing up to 100% of the worm. These 4 Black Ops soldiers consumed a good portion of the nation's wealth, as they had weapons and armor made from top-grade dungeon metals and cartridges filled with Origin-tier bullets. A good portion of the Origin-tier monsters hunted by members of the Association and obtained by the U.S. were used to arm the Black Ops. They were Origin-tier killers, and Snow was on their kill list tonight. "I got word that Miss Miquella won't be coming. We'll have to handle this on our own. Our target is a master of illusion. We might be able to track his true presence, but be on your guard. It's best if we take him out before he puts up a fight." The voice of their leader rang in the ears of the other 3 through their comms. All of them aimed their rifles at the man who paused, looking at the trash bin. "Now," a voice roared in the ears of the Black Ops soldiers, and all of them unleashed fire at the same time. Flames kissed the night as golden bullets tore through the air with insane velocity that caused shockwaves. Origin-tier bullets weren't normal, not in the slightest. Snow's eyes turned pure white, his hair floating as it was dyed white. He simply stretched his hand, and the bullets, when they reached him, would bloom into golden flowers dancing around him as they slowly descended to the ground. A large amount of black glimmer billowed off Snow. "Is this a joke? Those are Origin-tier bullets," one of the Black Ops soldiers exclaimed while he kept shooting, but their bullets were only being wasted at this point. Snow exhaled, and the glimmer around him swept outward in a ring-like fashion. It engulfed the buildings around them, transforming the place into a desert. The Black Ops saw the people that were within those homes had been turned into stone, all frozen in whatever they were doing. Only one building wasn't touched, and it was the tea shop. Rowana watched Snow from within, her eyes filled with concern. For Snow to be in this state, he was in extreme danger and had allowed himself to be possessed. This wasn't in the data, the leader of the Black Ops stated solemnly, eyeing Snow through the dark visor of his helmet. He brought out his pistol and was about to shoot at Snow when the sand suddenly opened up and he fell in. One threw grenades, but they suspended midair. With the black glimmer, Snow's illusions on himself became reality. The grenade remained stuck midair as massive butterfly wings burst out his back. It had several colors that reflected not just on the desert, but in the eyes of the astonished Black Ops. Just what in the world were they fighting? All three of them dashed toward Snow. Their speed was frightening, but Snow simply caused a sandstorm that somehow had hands that grabbed the soldiers. They used bombs, knives, and pistols, but it all failed as Crimson Glimmer transformed their bodies into stone before the Black One made them crumble. Snow exhaled, his hair returning to normal as the desert vanished in a wave of black glimmer. The neighborhood returned with people back in their houses. Rowana was about to leave the tea shop to meet Snow when she saw someone sitting on one of the tables. He calmly dropped a bill on the table. "I'd like to have the same thing I had when I last visited," Godfrey's soft voice rang. "When did he get here?" Rowana froze in place. Snow walked into the tea shop and sat opposite him while Rowana reluctantly went to prepare the tea. Though she peeked at them, hoping nothing happened. "Your soldiers stopped following me a good while ago. I guessed you would be visiting soon." Snow crossed his arms. "You didn't kill her." Godfrey's statement made Snow silent as his eyes grew wide. "There's only one way you can be so sure. She's alive," he gasped. Godfrey gave a calm nod. "She is." He trusted Snow, and that was something incredibly rare for the current him, but the reason was because it had been proven that Snow wasn't a clone. If he was, Kane would have made sure Isolde never got to know his secret. Kane was smart, Godfrey had to admit. That self-proclaimed god spared Snow because he wanted to use him as a distraction. It was either they both fought to the death or their growing bond would shatter, and it did. Godfrey completely saw Snow as a clone and was waiting for Isolde's confirmation to make the move. Trust was broken. In that little move, Kane cut him off from a potential ally, but Isolde's resurrection usurped that plan. Like he thought, Isolde's resurrection was the game changer. It had opened a path that Kane couldn't see. "Well, that explains why you didn't come for my head. I would say that's a relief if the entire nation and the world at large didn't see me as a fugitive. You saw who they sent, right? I might not have survived if it weren't for that possession skill." Snow's eyes flickered. "You know, before the mana tree called me, I was lost, tired, but then it gave me power. With that power, I thought I was free, but now I'm a fugitive wanted for the death of a superintendent, and Isolde who is actually alive, but you clearly want to keep that a secret." He spat, clearly holding a little grudge now that he knew Isolde was alive. "By the way, I've been meaning to ask, how many times have you gotten to the tree? You seem to grow without end. It's like you're that tree's favorite." Godfrey lifted up his head at that remark. "It's the opposite. I've been there once." Suddenly, his eyes narrowed. The mana fruit. Dirge had always been adamant to evolve despite the cores. Well, he had not fed her a paragon core, but even if he had one, it would be for Isolde. But now that he thought about it, Dirge's mouth wasn't covered. Isolde could also leave her armor, meaning both of them might be able to eat mana fruits. Might. But the mana tree had an obvious dislike for the pitons. It only got interested when an elf was involved, and the mana fruit used for Isolde didn't make her any more powerful. It just aided the implants like the false heart to revive her. It was her victory over the mother of dragons that gave her the strength she possessed. And that was because that mana fruit wasn't a specialized one. A fruit that fell for a specific reason was powerful for that reason, but much weaker for other reasons. One of the widespread proofs was how the fruits that were brought back after the Great Vanishing didn't skyrocket people through ranks like it did the king-queen tiers that went to the mana tree's world. It was specifically meant for them and not the others. Gee, Godfrey, Godfrey, Snow called out to Godfrey, who was lost in thought. I believe the mana tree responds to desires. That thing reads the heart, and in a way, it restored my desire, but in a different way. Now I can change my form and environment on a whim. I became powerful. For a moment we were equals, but now I feel like someone who recovered from a drug. Snow sighed softly. Godfrey looked at Rowana, who approached, dropped the tea, glanced at both of them, and left. He took a sip. Desires. If the mana tree responded based on desires, everyone would be a god. It has its own criteria, and I call that choice. It just picks whoever it wants, grants them power, and picks another, granting them the power to stand up to the first. It makes their desires come true, but it brought up that desire in the first place. Godfrey's eyes narrowed slowly. The apocalypse wasn't our doing, it was that of the mana tree. Then it waited until we earnestly wanted to fight back, to survive, so it granted us the power of summoning. Can it be cut down? What? Godfrey raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised at Snow's question. Adam was able to carve into it, and he wasn't even an origin tier summoner, Snow responded. Godfrey shook his head. It was actually Cain who carved into it. Adam didn't care. Although Cain told me this himself, I believe it because it actually matches his character. And back then Cain was at least a peak-level paragon tier, or most likely a progenitor. However, the mana tree simply played along. When I got there, I didn't see that mark anymore. I'm sure it was the same place the ranking was carved that I appeared. That aside, the mana tree is the source of mana. Without it, mana will cease to exist. The same thing will happen for the current you and the world order. Without the mana tree, this world ends. Even you and I don't think you have ever imagined yourself living in a mundane world as a normal man who can be killed by the slightest accident. Godfrey's response made Snow release his folded arms and look away. I'm a fugitive. There's no life for me here. I've been hearing a lot about paradise. That's where you must have been. Can you take me and Rowana there? Snow raised an eyebrow when he saw the look Godfrey gave him. What? Cain is the door into paradise and out of it. Going in there means you're going to be watched without end. Wait, what? Gabriel, the man who watches over paradise, is one of Cain's bodies. The same for our headmaster. We speculate Cain might have 4 main bodies, but we know 3. It was Sebastian's ability that made you unable to recall anything. It was Gabriel, the man I trusted, the man that taught me about Cain and keeping my grudge aside to help people that killed Isolde. Godfrey's words made Snow's eyes widen. But the headmaster, he went to prison because of you. He did, and that's why I would never have suspected him. I actually felt guilty for him, Godfrey admitted with clenched teeth. Snow felt the world grow small, as if the entire earth was in the palm of one man. However, I've made up my mind to go there. Godfrey looked at him. I need to meet my mother, especially to confirm who that man truly is. You want to what? The next morning. The Pendragon mansion had a fraction of their number. Lots of the servants, gardeners, cooks had been given an indefinite break, only told to appear when they were called upon. Everyone thought the reason was because Arthur Pendragon and his wife were devastated by the death of their last child. No one actually knew it was because they wanted to hide their resurrected daughter. Even though she came back with sharper facial features, long dark red hair, different eyes, and the aura of an inhuman existence than a human, Isolde could still be recognized without proper precautionary acts. Christine emerged from the kitchen with 2 glass cups filled with pomegranate juice. She found Isolde gazing at the garden beyond the floor-to-ceiling window in the dining room. Sunlight pouring in through the glass embraced the young woman. She stood there in a white shirt that clearly belonged to Godfrey, hair tied into a sleek high ponytail, and looked lost in thought. "Don't tell me you're pregnant," Christine said. Isolde was flustered, turning to her mother with wide eyes at what she just said. "Pregnant?" Christine chuckled and sipped from her cup before handing the other over to Isolde. "That expression tells me you've both gone past that stage, and more than once too." Isolde's cheeks flushed a bright pink hue. Christine sat on her favorite chair. She crossed her leg over the other, gently dropping her glass cup on the table. "Don't be embarrassed. I was the one that usually made the first move when I just got married to your father," Christine said. As Christine spoke, Isolde's eyes widened. "Just like me," Christine laughed inwardly. Isolde was so embarrassed her cheeks and ears became beet red. She quickly drank her fruit drink to calm herself. What in the world was wrong with her mother? Well, she was the blunt type. Isolde couldn't imagine the words her mother used when she wanted to be intimate with her father. Watching her daughter puff her cheeks with the pomegranate juice, Christine smirked. "You're the one stirring up the dragon. You'll come to regret it as I did. Once they toss away that virgin coat completely, you'll be the one begging." "Pish." The fruit juice sprayed out of Isolde's mouth. She coughed nonstop as her mind ran wild with images of Godfrey that made her face hot. "I personally squeezed that pomegranate. Don't waste it," Christine scolded softly as she took another sip. "I married at your age, but childbirth became a problem. It took us 6 years before we had you, but since then it hasn't been possible anymore. According to the doctors, it was because my symbiosis exceeded 50%. A part of me changed, and it affected my fertility." A solemn expression fell on Isolde's once flushed and charming face that could melt the heart of a man. Now it was one that realized something probably grave. She understood what her mother meant, that she had to tell Godfrey of her own state since she also exceeded the 50%. But it might be worse. Now that her body was alchemically mutated, and she bore the title of the Mother of Dragons, being connected to countless dragons, could she still bear a child when the time came when she wanted one? What if Godfrey wanted one, and she couldn't provide? "Calm down, honey. Godfrey has gone to great lengths for you. Being childless won't reduce his love for you. He's like your father, only just more intense. He's crazy over you, but not the type to show it unless in certain circumstances, like when you died. His pain was so heavy I could feel it weigh on my heart," Christine said. Her eyes flashed. It was like a cloud of grief hovered around him. She muttered softly. Isolde pressed her lips into a thin line. 100 miles away, before the dormant draconic volcanoes that were an iconic trait of Pendragon Island, 2 dragons flew. They burst through the white clouds. One had 4 wings and white fur instead of scales. She had golden horns and eyes, also known as the most beautiful dragon alive. This saint-tier beast had a saddle but no rider. Its massive body soared above the white clouds. Its fur fluttered as it flew. A much smaller black-scaled dragon, 85 feet long, burst out from below, roaring softly as it bared its fangs playfully at the much larger chimeric dragon. This white one, Shireen, roared back, hitting her tail lightly against the head of Jeffrey's dragon before increasing her speed. A.N. Common pronunciation, Jeffrey equals Jeffrey. Both dragons were clearly friends returning from a hunt. The small black dragon chased after Shireen, quickly gaining on her. But just then, Shireen roared. Not a playful roar, but a confused one as her wings ceased and folded inward against her will. It was like something forcefully controlled her body. Shireen plummeted, falling through the clouds. When she almost fell off the last layer of clouds, a much bigger dragon swooped up, chomping down on her neck. This white dragon with red bone spikes was over 60 feet longer than Shireen and looked ferocious. Shireen let out a cry as dread clawed her chest with her neck at the mercy of his fangs and her head, in a position where she couldn't spit a black hole at him. Before Dread could kill the white chimeric dragon, the black one engulfed Dread's back with flames as it swooped down, clawing at Dread's chest, but its powerful claws couldn't rip open through the huge dragon's scales. It was just a throne-tier dragon, and Dread was a peak-level origin-tier beast. The smaller dragon's interference made Dread release Shireen. She fell from the clouds, crashing into a thick forest. The fall cleared hundreds of trees. Meanwhile, Dread roared at the small dragon that flew upward in order to get away from Dread. It was smaller, it was faster and more agile. But Dread blinked, controlling the blood within the black dragon's body. It froze midair and began to fall. Dread grabbed it and engulfed the small dragon with flames that cleared the clouds, as it seemed the sky itself was unleashing flames on the earth. When the flames died out, a burning dead dragon spiraled down, leaving a huge trail of smoke from the sky down to where it crashed. The flames spread out, burning the trees. Dread roared and turned to its prime target, but Shireen was gone. The depression of where she fell remained. She couldn't fly either after such injuries. There was only one explanation. It had been retrieved by its summoner. Christine felt like a part of her was dying, forcing her to recall her summon. She opened a portal on the garden just beside the dining room, but when Shireen fell out, bleeding profusely from her neck and chest, the glass cup fell from Christine's hand, shattering into several pieces, stained with scarlet pomegranate juice, as the woman sprang to her feet. Isolde's lashes trembled. Lips parted into an O as shock drained the brightness from her face. While her mother hurriedly called for healers, Isolde went to the garden, her arms trembling as she slowly lowered it and caressed Shireen's fur. Pain and anger mixed in her heart as Shireen whimpered and roared softly. From day one, Shireen had been there. It was like a second mother to her. And now a pool of blood had formed beneath her as it seeped from the wound at the neck. As powerful as Isolde was, she wasn't a healer. Her dragons had all sorts of abilities, but they were all aimed towards destruction. Few of them had skills that allowed them to self-heal, but healing others was a skill none had. Christine rushed out, gently holding Shireen's head with tear-filled eyes. Her summon was dying. "She won't last much longer. I'll send you to the hospital," Isolde said firmly. Knowing their weakness, the family had established a hospital with adept healing summoners. Christine retrieved Shireen and was consumed by a violet orb, reappearing right in the hospital. Isolde remained in the garden. As much as she wanted to be there, no one could know she was alive. It would be hard to hide her identity in a place filled with people who were used to seeing her, and quite a good number of her family members would be there too. She paced around the garden for a while before heading back inside. As she cleaned up the shattered glass on the floor, her mother's ringing phone made her ears prickle. "She left her phone," Isolde muttered inwardly, a bit curious why Melania, her distant aunt, was calling so relentlessly. This was the 7th missed call. She must have been calling when they were outside with Shireen. The ringing stopped right as she wanted to pick up the phone. A moment later, while Isolde pondered if she should call back, a text message popped up. "My son is dead." Isolde's eyes emptied as she went still. Jeffrey was dead. Jeffrey. Jeffrey had always been on her side despite their little differences. Both he and his younger sister Ivy were the closest cousins she had. She could remember his worried face back when they were younger, and the doctors would attend to her after her nightmares. He used to mock and make a buffoon of Godfrey in order to make her overcome her fear. He was the first to call her the Pendragon heiress. Jeffrey. She took deep breaths to control herself. She desperately wanted to wake up from this nightmare and hear her husband's comforting words. She desperately wanted to hug someone, but that person wasn't here. Isolde couldn't bring herself to call Melania, as her gut feeling told her Jeffrey's death was linked to Shireen's near-death state. 2 hours later, Arthur in a coat stood in a part of the forest in the depths of the dungeon. About 3 football fields worth of space had been razed down. The once green land was now filled with ashes and some stumps that were burned beyond saving. In the heart of it all was the corpse of a badly charred dragon. Not far from it was a great depression. It was the place Shireen fell. Dozens of dragon officers occupied the place. While they did their investigation, Arthur simply stared at the dragon corpse. He got the news 30 minutes ago and had to come here. The captain of the officers approached Arthur, revealing his solemn face as he removed his mask. This was the attack of a wild dragon, Master Arthur. Probably a demon-corrupted one that has emerged. There are demon-corrupted creatures with tiers higher than the norm appearing in lots of dungeons lately. This looks like a case of one. From the bite marks on your wife's dragon and other estimates, the wild dragon that attacked them might be the biggest we've ever seen apart from yours, the captain added with a somber tone. So we might be dealing with a powerful origin-tier creature. Arthur looked at him from the corner of his eyes. The captain nodded, unable to believe how Arthur was still so calm. His wife was a step from becoming a cripple or worse, ending up like Geoffrey Pendragon, who died because his summon was killed. Had it been him, he would have been screaming at every officer within his sight. I suggest dragons are prohibited from hunting until we find and kill this beast. The captain couldn't finish as a red dragon, about 100 feet long, appeared in the sky above them, its wings bigger than a ship's sails. It cast a huge shadow over everyone. They looked up. The wyverns of some dragon officers roared fiercely at the dragon, but it swooped down nonetheless, resulting in a landing that raised a great amount of dust. The red dragon lowered its body and laid its head on the ground, revealing a golden armored knight who descended from her mount. This is a magnificent knight, and the aura she carries is overwhelming, the captain thought as Isolde went straight to the corpse. The dragon officers subconsciously went out of her way. They were supposed to block this stranger, even if it was one of the late heiress husband's summons, but none of them dared to look twice into the eyes of this female knight. She outclassed them. This being was a 7-foot-tall majestic queen. The way she moved spoke of her sovereignty. Isolde squatted, her cloak resting on the ash-covered ground as she placed her gauntleted hand featuring lethal claws on the dragon carcass. White mist in the form of the dragon formed a faint outline over the carcass. Isolde's eyes pulsed, and she saw what the dragon saw as it fell to its death. A white dragon with red bone spikes and stripes. It was bigger than most dragons. From what she could perceive from this dead dragon, the attacking dragon was a wild dragon. Dragons were sensitive to mana, but there was no connection with a summoner when it came to this dragon. That would have been true, but Nyx's large compound eyes appeared behind Isolde, but no one could see it since this was Nyx using her ability through Isolde, but she was still in the Mother of Dragon's soul domain. She won't survive the next attack. Isolde saw James sitting on the balcony of a grand mansion with the head of our Roberose and the Bane family. This hadn't happened yet, but it already told her who instigated this and where they would be. "Dear uncle," Isolde whispered with a voice as cold as glacial steel. On the next day, the warmth of the sun couldn't be felt by the small group of people attending Geoffrey's funeral. They all wore black suits. As the coffin was lowered, Arthur watched while Christine comforted Melania, who had almost soaked her handkerchief with her own tears. Ivy stood there with vacant eyes. She had lost Isolde and now her own brother. It shook her confidence in her family. They were supposed to be untouchable. How could dragons die such an ignoble death? Isolde was found with a hole in her chest, lying dead in her own pool of blood. A wretched end for a woman of her status and future, and now this. Her brother's summon was killed by a corrupted dragon, and he was one of the unfortunate few whose backlash was so severe they died along with their summons. Dragons were apex creatures. They represented the insurmountable skis. Right. Ivy wasn't so sure anymore. As she stood there, clothed in black, holding a small bag, her lithe body trembling, albeit too gently for anyone to notice. Her eyes went to Arthur Pendragon, the pillar of their family. He stood there with a broad back, still emanating that same power he always had, but was this real or a facade he was putting up? He nearly lost his wife after losing his daughter. After the body was lowered and all the rites were performed, it was completely covered, and a grave marker was placed above it. Members placed their flowers as the funeral came to an end. They eventually scattered, some speaking to the family of the deceased, some in other circles, discussing the corrupted dragon. While Arthur stood beside his wife, who spoke to Melania and her husband, James walked over. "I'm terribly sorry for your loss, Melania." He sighed softly before turning to Arthur, his eyes sharpened. "You should have considered my request to develop this entire island, all of it. If that was done, we would have spotted an anomaly before your wife almost lost her life, and a young Pendragon lost his." Arthur glanced at him and James stared back. "I'm disappointed in you, brother." He turned and walked away. Christine forced a smile to hide her anger while Arthur looked at James leave, his figure reflecting in his eyes. Most parts of the dungeon were left wild because dragons were part of the Pendragons. A good portion was already developed, the other part was for the dragons. It was their hunting ground, where they could train and gain experience from the spawning dragons and other creatures. Following James's advice would be reducing the dragons to just pets, as they might only be confined to their soul space, or would not be able to enjoy their own time without flying over a metropolis with millions watching them. That aside, Arthur knew what his brother had done. He wanted nothing more than to end James right here and now, but Isolde had demanded she do it. Christine turned to her husband after Melania and her husband left. "It's obvious he received a manna fruit, but to think he would blame you right before Melania when he's behind it all." She calmed herself. "What do you think Isolde will do?" "Do what the next in line to lead must do. Deal with whoever spills Pendragon blood," Arthur replied. After everyone had left the graveyard, someone stepped out of a dark violet portal. She wore a black blouse beneath a black blazer, high-waisted pencil skirt and thigh-high boots. A black face mask hid the lower part of her face, while her red hair was tied into a neat, high ponytail. Even if anyone saw her, they might think she was his girlfriend or something along that line. She held a bouquet of roses. Jeffrey gave her one on her birthdays. It was like a tradition between them where he would bring the number of roses that matched her age. Now she brought 23. Isolde dropped the bouquet and her eyes gleamed. A clawed hand covered with smooth scales pierced through the weakened barrier of Jeffrey's soul space, and a feminine being entered. She had a red tail, 4 dragonfly wings from her back, long claws both on her fingers and toes. Scales went up her fingers to her elbows, but the scales from her toes went up to her waist. Dark red hair from her scalp flowed down to her feet, fluttering like it had a life of its own. Her pupils were like dark slits in her golden irises, which moved about in her dark orange sclera. Her eyes froze, reflecting a young man curled in his soul space, slowly fatting. He was in the same state she had once been. Jeffrey's eyes slowly widened at the sight of this goddess-like being. She had this otherworldly beauty, and at the same time was so intimidating he could barely think. In a way, this being looked like his cousin. "Aye, Isolde," he sounded uncertain. Isolde stretched her hand toward him. "Take my hand." Jeffrey floated upward, stretching his hand like a drowning man reaching out to his savior above. The moment he grabbed her hand, both of them appeared in a barren plain with silhouettes of dragons in the dark clouds, many more below the clouds, and some resting on the ground. Jeffrey's eyes were locked on a black dragon who coiled itself, by hiding its face behind its wings. That's half of you. If you choose to fuse back, I could bring you back to the world, but as a dragon, Isolde said as Geoffrey approached his dragon. It brought out its head, sensing his approach. Geoffrey caressed the dragon's head. Hey, buddy. Being alive is better than being dead. Ah, are you alive, or are you some kind of spirit dragon goddess now? Geoffrey turned to her. Isolde's lips curled into a soft smile. I'm alive. She stretched her hand, and a bright light fused Geoffrey's fatting soul with his dragon. When the light faded, the dragon had reached 120 feet long. It also grew an extra pair of horns. Intelligence befitting a human's gleamed in his eyes as he growled. You won't make a bad family head at all. His voice rang in Isolde's mind. Her intimidating eyes revealed a soft light, but the moment Isolde opened her eyes in the real world, coldness returned to those already frightening eyes. Luther the Black Death, the time to make your debut into the world is near, she said coldly. A deep rumbling growl responded. I await. A butler slid open a glass door, and James walked out onto the balcony with a smile. He was in one of the most prestigious mansions in the entire western region. A mansion built on a hilltop in a dungeon in Argentina, the Ouroboros homeland. It took him over 10 hours on the plane to get here. Of course, he felt good during the journey. After all, his plan was coming together quite nicely, and what's more, he would be getting married to the most beautiful woman in the western region. She seldom appeared in public meetings after she became a widow, but no woman has yet to beat her beauty for over 2 decades now. As James thought about this, his smile widened. The woman he thought about sat at the heart of this large balcony with Dennis Bain, the head of the Bain family, famously known as Mr. Manhattan. Morgana Ouroboros smirked when James pecked her cheek and sat down on the last chair, which was obviously reserved for him. Visiting Argentina has always been a delight. James turned to Mr. Manhattan and gave a soft nod, to which the huge white-haired man reciprocated with a nod of his own. James turned to the beautiful woman seated at his right. She had long silver hair tied back, pale, supple skin. She put enough care to enhance despite her innate beauty gained through the symbiosis connection to her origin tier python. Her enchanting blue eyes were fixed on him. Those same eyes could turn her foes to stone, and it was said she had learned a skill that allowed her to secret venom from her own salivary glands. As much as James fancied her beauty and felt proud to have her as his wife, this was nothing more than a strategic union. Despite being an origin tier himself, he would never let that woman get too close until he had gained a skill that could nullify her venom, which was said to be the deadliest in the world. Knowing what they wanted to hear, James told them, "She won't survive the next attack." Morgana took a glass up filled with wine and sipped. "Killing the boy has at least done something useful, but I doubt you can kill Christine's dragon anymore." Her eyes flashed and her irises tilted toward James. "What about Godfrey? He would be a problem." "You have no need to worry about that. We've sent Miquella, and you know she never fails." Mr. Manhattan responded with a soft, confident smile. "It's been days, why hasn't she finished the job already?" Morgana scoffed, showing her irritation. "She hasn't reported back. I doubt she has handled the mission yet, but I sent a message on my way here. By tonight, she should get it done." Mr. Manhattan replied, unaware Miquella had isolated herself, still reeling from the shock of her terrible defeat. "Once that's settled, I'm sure the Pendragons will incline towards you once we announce our wedding." Morgana looked at James. James filled his glass cup, drank nearly half of it, then dropped the glass cup with a smile. He didn't say a word, there was no need to. Victory was within sight. He looked at the vast forest that surrounded the mansion. Unlike the Pendragon Island, only the Ouroboros mansion was built on this vast piece of land. Both this and the island, along with dozens of other dungeons, will belong to him and Morgana soon. And all this was because of the mana tree. There was a saying that not even the strongest beings saw the top of the tree. From what he saw, paragons were still insignificant. He could almost imagine more fruits. That would make him a literal god. But first, how do we get rid of Arthur? Mr. Manhattan asked with a grave tone. Both he and Morgana wanted to avenge their children. They had waited this long and would peel away those protective layers hindering them from achieving their goal. One of which was Arthur. A joint attack will bring him down. Two of us are origin tiers, and you, Mr. Manhattan, are close to being one. Your wolf has the dragon bane. It's the D-bane of my family. The Pendragons will never accept me if they find out, so we have to do it secretly, James told them. So we'll lure him into a trap then. Do you have any place in mind? Morgana looked at James through her glass cup. Well, James couldn't say another word as they all turned to the violet portal that came from nowhere. A 7-foot black knight walked out. She had a fur-collared cloak, golden dragon sculpture like a necklace around her armored neck. Although her helmet, which had jagged protrusions like dragon horns, had an almond-shaped visor, they couldn't see anything except those inhuman glowing eyes. Her red hair flowed down her cloak, reaching the middle of her waist. With the aid of the helmet, it was stuck to the back and would not hinder her in combat. You conspired, killed a Pendragon, and threatened the life of the wife of a man that has spent his life defending this region from monsters. It's a pity that I once looked up to you, all of you, but not anymore. Morgana lifted up an eyebrow. And what are you going to do? No reasonable person would dare step up against them, not when all three of them are together. Is she a knight from him? No, I doubt that highly. I feel like I'm speaking to a human, not a summon, but I've never met the person. Could it be there's something I've overlooked? James thought, but outwardly, he sneered. He sat beside one of the strongest women in the region, and a man known as the Dragon Bane himself. Who are you, and what exactly do you think you can do by coming here? James tilted his head. This is Mr. Manhattan, one of the 7 heads, supreme rulers over the entire world. Besides, where is the evidence for what you're saying? Evidence? Isolde chuckled. You're delusional. As she said that, an incredibly massive portal opened up, unleashing a dragon with jet-black scales. Luther the Black Death spread out his wings, and the entire grand mansion that spanned the hill was engulfed in the darkness of its shadow. Morgana's pupils shook. Mr. Manhattan stilled while James felt goosebumps everywhere. His skin was cold, yet inside his body was hot. His eyes were on Luther. What in the world was this monstrosity? Isolde's eyes gleamed. I am the evidence. The moment she uttered that, Luther unleashed purple flames. These people were at the top of the world, but before the intimidating aura of a paragon-tier dragon that had killed progenitors in the past, their minds and bodies recoiled in fear. And what met them next were flames. In an instant, the entire mansion was bathed with searing heat. Morgana screeched as she was incinerated, alongside Mr. Manhattan, who Isolde watched burn into nothing with glacial eyes. He was Cain's clone at the end of the day, and the vessel primarily responsible for her death. The structure also couldn't handle the flames and collapsed. Isolde unfurled a pair of dragon wings, keeping herself afloat as the mansion crumbled. James, whose flesh and clothes had burned even when Luther manipulated his flames not to harm him, hid under the wings of his dragons, both of which protected him from the collapsing mansion. The flames had avoided them. Isolde descended slowly, finally landing on a large cement slab. Eber and Dread looked at the mighty dragon that landed behind Isolde. His height was more than Dread's entire body length. Luther growled. It seemed as if it was the land itself that trembled. Eber cowered in fear, but Dread breathed flames at Isolde. The flame torrent engulfed her with great intensity, but when it died down, a naked James staggered. his eyes wide with horror as Isolde merely tilted her head like she was more irritated by Dread's mouth odor than his flames. The dragon fire of an apex-level origin tier dragon did nothing to her. James's eyes went blank. What a nuisance! Isolde spat as Luther lowered his head and crushed Dread with his mighty fangs. Blood dripped from the dragon's mouth as it chewed the smaller dragon before forcing Eber to the ground with a glare. Isolde removed her helmet and gracefully made her way toward James, whose eyes widened to the limit at the sight of Isolde's face. Her red hair fluttered as purple flames roared around them. The mansion was gone, but beyond that, the forest had turned into purple inferno. Isolde grabbed James' head with one hand, held his shoulder the other, and forced him to his knees as the glow in her eyes grew stronger. Flames literally burned in her irises as she opened her mouth and breathed flames that consumed James. Isolde left a kneeling, scorched skeleton. It disintegrated into dust that scattered into the wind and was devoured by the flames. Luther took to the skis, breathing flames at everything within his sight while Isolde put on her helmet. She took deep breaths. This was good. Godfrey didn't have to see her this way, not this dragon part of her. She preferred using a spear because it showed her elegance and graceful beauty, nothing like this other side of her. Her husband needed restraint, and she showed him love, teased him, always making sure her presence warmed his heart. But that wasn't all there was to Isolde Pendragon. After all, she was taught to kill from a young age. "Luther, that's enough," Isolde ordered, forcing Luther to stop, but the entire dungeon was already in flames. A forest that spread for miles was now engulfed in flames that would never stop burning. Isolde retrieved Luther and vanished after ensuring he took back his flames. "We're going through the gate, Mr. President," the personal assistant told the president of Argentina, who sat at the back of a luxury SUV. The president nodded. This was a good opportunity he was walking into. It wasn't every day someone like him got to meet Morgana Ouroboros and Mr. Manhattan in the same place. This visit might prove useful for his country. His thoughts stopped when the vehicle suddenly screeched to a halt. "What is it?" he inquired. "What did you say? Is this a joke?" His personal assistant gasped as he was making a call. "What's going on?" The president frowned, feeling a bit uneasy. His personal assistant turned to him. "Our security has insisted that we open the windows and see for ourselves." "See what?" The president's frown deepened. "The Ouroboros dungeon is. The president needed no further words when his window was brought down, and he saw a vast amount of scorched land. A once lush forest was now a wasteland. A complete wasteland. Not even the Ouroboros mansion was standing. Wasn't she having a meeting with Mr. Manhattan? What kind of existence could do such a thing to this place? His heart grew cold. Whatever they provoked was clearly out for destruction. He doubted Morgana and Mr. Manhattan were alive because they would have given signals requesting reinforcement or seeking safety. If this was a monster, the gate should have turned black. It was obvious. Two of the Western world's most influential people had died here, and one sat on the seat of the seven heads. This would cause a massive upheaval turmoil. In a massive cavern so big it could house the biggest metropolis Earth had, a giant black spider faced off against something walking into its cavern. This spider was pitch black with one crimson eye on her back and 8 crimson eyes on her face. She was Neela, the stealer of memories and enchantress of the dark cave. She was one of the numerous gods across the worlds, and one of the most dreaded ones on her world of arachnids. Those who wandered or were enticed into her cave never got to leave. The hills of bones were evidence, but today she was anxious. Someone had entered her cave, and it was him, the mad god killer, a madman who had been killing gods and wiping out races. The devilish monkey, the human fiend, king of slaughter. Neela screeched as his silhouette loomed from one of the entrances into the main cavern. He stood there, his staff over his shoulder, eyes like fire boring holes through her thick carapace. "We can negotiate," Neela's sweet voice rang. Adam sighed, "We can't." "I can bring your wife and child back," Neela whispered, her voice echoing as the eye on her back blinked. The moment it did that, Neela caught a deep glimpse into Adam's memory. Unfortunately, she couldn't steal them because of his strength, but she saw the slaughter. This man was death's incarnation, but before all this was a poor man who saw his family as his world. A selfish man, if you ask her. "I can." "No," Adam said coldly as his staff appeared above and flattened Neela. "You'll regret it. You'll regret it, you vile man. I will." "Ah!" Neela screamed in rage but quickly detached her soul before Adam would use her to strengthen himself even further. In a way, she had been preparing herself for this day. Her soul went straight for Earth, searching until she found who she wanted. A woman casually chatted with her son as they drove on the road. The woman looked exactly like Adam's wife, and she was just a normal human. But the brown-haired boy beside her, the one she called Isaac. Yes, this could be her vengeance on that bastard. Neela's eyes gleamed as she loomed over Isaac's soul space. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the video and comment down if anything wrong in the story. And if have any suggestion to a new novel or want next part of any series, comment down.